Today we have got a sweet double text illusion in Tinkercad. So literally, let's get cracking. Today we're going to start with a bit.ly, LGC for let's get cracking, and free. Once you get to the design, as you can see, it is set as copy and tinker. Please remember the golden rule of Tinkercad. Give a reaction before you copy and tinker. So when you arrive, there are a bunch of notes explaining a lot of my projects. These notes explain how to get to the tutorial. I'm going to real quickly hide the notes, so that way when we switch from let's get to cracking, it shows up a little bit better. Now, of course, you could print this out just as it is, but I'm going to show you how to build one from scratch. I am in Canva. I added a text element and I put let's get cracking. For this sort of project, you need to have the same number of letters. That's why it is spelled like this. You also need them to line up. Now, these bottoms are a pain in the butt on this font. I figured that out afterwards. So here is a second version I made, and check out how much more lined up each of these letters are. You'll see in a moment that that's very valuable. Now, here's the trick. I broke let's get into 4 chunks. That way I could click on each of these and I could go to the letter spacing and adjust them until they were closer to perfect. I could have done it for each letter, which would have made it even better, because you'll notice this T is not lined up with the N. As a matter of fact, let me show you how to do that. I'm just going to do Control X to separate that and Control V to bring back the T. And now I can individually line up those with each other. Notice Canva also has this awesome feature where they try to connect. So with our words created, I did a screen capture of these. I'm going to do my shortcut for screen captures, and then I bring them to Snagit. This was extra cool too, because I am sure I grabbed the exact same size. And then in Snagit, I was able to right click and duplicate it. Then I could click on one and I cut off the top chunk. Notice I'm going to try and keep them the exact same height. So where this says 181, I'm going to go to this one and I'm going to do the let's get, and I'm going to keep it 181 as well, or as close as I can get. Now I'm going to quickly export these as PNGs. However you get yours saved as PNGs, that's up to you. File export is how I do it. I can simply click next, next. I'm going to keep the original names, do them as PNGs, and simply hit finish and finish. Now let's visit Picsvg. I'm going to upload those pictures. Once again, they're both right here. I'm doing them one at a time. I always switch from Edge to internal number 2. It's just the one I like most. Let's download that SVG. I'm going to store it in my downloads folder because I won't need this again. And I'm going to just put LG for let's get. And then, of course, we need to upload the other one. Once again, switch to internal 2. Download. And I'm going to just shorten this to CR. So this is how I found these parts. All right, so I gave you the one for free that you can just print, but let me show you how to build it. I'm going to start by naming it. I'm going to put let's get cracking, and I'm going to put double word. And then we're going to simply import those new parts. Choose a file. Of course, we got the let's get. I'm going to choose art. I want it to be smaller. I'm going to choose 100 or 10 centimeters, and I'm going to click import. It takes a second to arrive. And then once it does, I'm going to also choose import, choose file, and let's get the cracking. Once again, art, and I want that same measurement, 100, and press enter. And import. Now we've got our cool fonts. The letters line up reasonably well. And let me show you the technique to build this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to match the heights. So since this is 100, we're going to make this 100. Since this is 100, we're going to make it 100. Now let's take both of these and make them holes. And let's bring out a cube, and we're going to make what's called an inverse hole. So remember, this measurement's 100. This one's 22.79. So we're going to make this 101 because we want to make sure these edges exist. Of course, we need to make this 100. Let's double check that measurement one time again, 22.79. And we need to match this 22.78. I want to make sure that top piece cuts out. Control D because we need 2 of these. We'll line those up in a second. Right now, let's line these up. L for align. Make this one the boss. We want the bottom edge. Then I'm going to look at this from the corner, and I want it to be centered. That is sitting behind it right now. Of course, it was already lined up this way, so we can select these 2 and do Control G to group. After a moment, it cuts out. Now we're going to switch it to a hole. So let's complete the same process here. Double check 23.63. Let's see what happens if we set this to 23.62. I will select the 2, choose L for align. Once again, we want that bottom edge, and let's find the center. It's hiding behind here. If we look at it from this edge, this is barely poking out. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I want the red one. I'm going to try 23.31 and press enter. I do want to do a line because I don't want it to poke out the bottom. So once again, L for align. I want that bottom edge, peak at the top. That's cutting out more like I'd like, so now I can select the 2 and do Control G to group. Of course, once it groups, we need to make it a hole. Now we need to take both of these and lay them down. I'm going to do Shift Rotate, so I can do 90 degrees in 2 clicks. Let's do D to drop. And once again, Shift Rotate, 2 clicks is 90 degrees, and D to drop. We want our phrases left and right. So of course mine's going to say let's get and then cracking. Now we can click on this and we need to rotate it 45 degrees. This is our rotation handle. 2 clicks is 45, or if you hold Shift, it is 1 rotation. Of course, we can click on Kraken and do Shift Rotate 45 degrees the other direction. Next up, we line them up. I'm going to make this one red and hit T for transparent so I can see it better. I'm going to select the 2, choose L for align, choose that center and the bottom edge. Now we can zoom in. I'm going to switch to flat view and top view so we can get right to that corner. I'm going to use pan so I've got a better look at it. I'm going to set my nudge to off and then just click on one of them and find the edge that I think is most close. I'm going to switch back to perspective view and look at it from an angle. And we've got a good look at the let's get cracking. Find the red one and make it back into a hole. And it's time to cut it out. We're going to cut it out with a basic cube. And we need to make this a little bit larger than a single letter. So the letters should be about 20 by 20. So I'm going to go somewhere out close to 30. And then we're going to check this height. Notice I did 23.31. So I'm going to raise this up to 23.31 as well, making sure that it's all going to cut. So I'm going to try 22.5 and press enter. Now it is all going to be cut out. I'm going to just shrink this back so it's closer to the end. No sense having any more waste than we need. And then we can select it all and do Control G to group. This is pretty complex, so it takes a moment, but check it out. There is your let's get and your cracking. We just need to trim off these extra parts. So this is one of my favorite parts. Trimming this is super slick with the new sketch tool. We're going to bring it out and we're going to quickly hit finish, because what that does is it lets us select them both, choose L for align, and get it to the edge of our project. Pop, pop. Now if you can see the blue underneath, we're going to double click to edit it. And when we look at it from a top view, you can see these letters show up pretty well. I'm going to quickly cut this off. I want to cut a little past half. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure I've got all of this letter. I'm going to trim right along that edge and get that letter. You'll notice some of these intersect, and we'll fix that in a minute. I'm going to make sure that I've got all of this letter. The extra stuff is what we'll trim. And we just zigzag all the way back through our project. Once again, I'm going to have to fix this piece right here manually because they overlap. I want to make sure I get all of this letter and that letter And then I'm a little confused here. The I and the N are kind of tough on this project. And then I'm going to come up here and trim right along that edge. Click outside, come back, and then out here, because what we're making is a large block that's going to be used to cut. When we hit Finish Sketch, we can click on that new part, make it much taller, and a hole. And we're going to group these all at the same time, but I'll just give you a quick preview if we do Control G to group those two. So I am pretty happy with how the Kraken turned out, except up here. Check it out. We can double click. I can zoom in. And while I'm editing the whole part, I can also double click and edit the sketch. This right here is the edge I care about. So now I can grab that line and bring it right in. Of course, I can hit Finish Sketch. The pink shows we're in edit mode. When I click outside, it finishes editing. And we can zoom back here and see how the new version turned out. And from there, friends, we're going to do the other side. So first I'm going to ungroup because I want these two to be together. That's nice for editing later. Once again, bring out a sketch. I'm going to click Finish so I can line them up. L for a line. This one, bingo, bango. Find the blue. I can see it peeking through, so I'm going to double click it. Now in sketch mode, same thing. I'm going to start past middle, zigzag to the top just like before. Zoom way back and connect them. Now before I click out of this one, I did want to edit. I'm going to grab that line and drag it. I want it right to the edge of that letter. You can see I was poking right here to find it. I can grab single points. I could also, if I wanted to make this a curve, hit the number 3, which switches to a double Bezier mode, and I can get it so it traces that edge just the way I want. This may make the project much more efficient in the end. But we are going to use a lot of brute force, so I'll show you that in a moment as well. And finally, when you're happy, hit Finish Sketch. Of course, with that finished, I'm going to click on it, stretch it taller, make it a hole. Now we can look at everything we built, select them both, and do Control G to group. And after just a moment, we have got Let's Get Cracking, but there is extra garbage. Now this is kind of cool. Let me show you how we're going to get rid of those extra garbage parts. To make this faster, I'm going to bring out a whole cube. I'm going to Shift shrink it down to about size 10. So let's click this shape and hit C to cruise, grab the dot, and I'm going to set it on the side of that E. Because what I want to cut away is that little part right there. Now I clicked away and just lost the correct lift. We're going to hit the awesome E command to bring back what I call the living work plane. I'm going to switch my nudge to 0.5, and if we do the arrow keys, you can see I have just ran into that shape, so it'll cut. I do not want to cut this, so I'm going to lift it away or do Control up arrow. Bingo, that one is solved. Now, if I'd have been smart, I would have kept a masterpiece, but I didn't. So we're going to do Shift, Shrink. Once again, I'm going to get close to that size 10. Now I'm going to do Control D so the master stays. C for cruise, and I'm going to cruise it onto the G. And check it out. This time I lined it up initially so I can just move it away. I lost my living work plane again, so I'm going to show you once again. All you got to do is hit E, and bingo, that is back. It is such a slick trick. Of course, I just repeat that all the way around so that we've got all of our letters cut out. Of course, that was same trick several times. I do want to quickly highlight. I duplicated this one and I brought it over like this. You can also hit W for work plane. Notice because I have the work plane on this side, I can simply stretch that one out so it grabs those. I can grab this one and make sure it grabs that. And it ends up being more efficient than the other way I had been doing it. Of course, we do need to nudge it away so we don't cut away the C, but that took away a large chunk in one step. Work plane back on the ground once again. Control D, C to cruise, and I just continued this process all the way around our shape. Looks like I did this version a little more lined up in Canva, so we can actually delete. I've got a double N and E back here. Of course, we're going to get rid of it with the same technique. C to cruise, set this on the E. Of course, then use that living work plane and stretch, rotate, and extend so that we're going to be able to cut it off. I'm going to delete my template. Let's grab it all and do Control G to group. Missed a couple slivers here, but check this out. If we double click, I can go back in and edit those. Notice that was just a little bit low. I'm going to click back here to finish that edit. And the other one I saw was up here. Once again, same thing. It is just sticking out a little further than I thought. Once again, W for work plane so that we can just stretch it to where it needed to go. Click outside, and after a moment, the edit is completed. W for work plane, and check it out. There is your let's get, and you're cracking. How cool is that? All right, friends, so let's wrap this up with a base. I'm going to make mine with a simple cube. I do want to make sure that I keep the awesome radius. So see how this ended up being 134 by 22. I'm going to change this length to 140. And the reason I did this is because when I do a radius of 3, you can see that turns out nice and rounded. If I change the width to 30 and I'm going to change the height to 3, that all stays nice and round. The reason I highlight that, friends, is because if you bring these out and stretch the handles, this time I'm going to do a radius of 2, and check it out. It is not the same rounded shape that you start with. The moral of the story, friends, is if you stretch these handles, it can be super useful, but it breaks the parameters. See this distance of 40? These no longer work because we grabbed the handles. This one, if I change it to 40, the shape moves and it keeps that radius. I just want to highlight that because I do see that question quite often. Friends, really quickly, you can't print this yet because there are pieces that are essentially floating. What I did in the other project was I brought out cubes. I'm going to do Shift Shrink to make this small. Let's go like size 3. I'm going to hide this for a second. I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to rotate it to the right amount, something like that. And then I'm going to make sure it's in place. It connects that part, but it also hides underneath it. If you wanted to make it longer, I'll show you this real quick. You can put the work plane on this side so it stretches out for the entire letter. Put W for work plane to put it back, and then I continued that all the way down the project till it turned out perfect. Of course, if you've got that copy, you can check them out. If we do show all, you can see that part is connected now, but you can hardly see that little piece I added. I'm going to choose to export this as 2 pieces, so it's easy to print as 2 colors. I'm going to export this as the base. I'll keep the file name, but add that word base after it. Now I'm going to hide this part, grab the rest. Of course, choose Export STL. This time it'll be 12 shapes. It's also a little more complex, so it takes a moment longer. And I'll name this as the top. And hit save. And we are ready for 3D printing. Time to send it to the 3D printer. Of course, we're going to hit prepare. Let's add those 2 files. I've got double word top and base. And we can hit open. I'm going to say yes, single object, multiple parts. That way they keep their alignment. I'm going to print it with a silver bottom, and I want the letters to be blue. Today I'm going to print using the paint tools. I'm going to paint using a height range. I want to paint blue, and I'm going to have it be at the start of the letters. So I'm going to just get to the very bottom and have it paint all the way up, just like that. Let's look at it from every side. I think that's going to be absolutely awesome. I'm going to hit slice plate. Notice it does say that it's going to have floating regions. We're going to fix that by making sure we turn on supports. I like the tree supports. I'm going to use the auto supports. Once again, let's slice that plate. It's going to start gray and then switch to blue. I like that because it's more efficient. And I love that the whole project's going to be done in about an hour. Let's hit print plate. And I just had to refresh because my printer was not connected. And let's send it for printing. Of course, after a moment, it bounces to the device menu. Then we need to simply wait for it to finish downloading. And then, of course, we can hit play. and monitor everything from afar. And a little more than an hour later, we have got a Let's Get Crackin' sign. And let's peel off some supports. Of course, you can do it by hand, or I also like to get in here with my little clippers. Just like that. And not too many minutes later, check it out. There's Let's Get and Crackin'. How cool is that? So there you have it. Simple steps to take your Canva text and turn it into a 3D printed double illusion using Tinkercad. Of course, friends, as I wrap up, I do want to highlight my Patreon. Absolutely love how that group is growing. You can, of course, learn more with the bit.ly up above or the link in the description. Finally, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget, every time you hit that like button, share a video, add a comment down below, or you click subscribe, you're helping HLModTech get just a little bit bigger, which absolutely makes my day. Friends, have a glorious day and keep tinkering.